Hey guys, Sean Cobra from Performance Functional Training here. In today's video series, we're going to be going through some of my go-to travel training sessions. So I've done a lot of travel over the years. I would typically spend 8 or 9 months working each year, and then I'd spend 3 to 4 months traveling every year. And one thing I found was staying in shape whilst I was on the road wasn't as difficult as most people assume. But a lot of people ask me how I maintain my fitness and even built some strength and muscle whilst I was traveling. So the first thing was that I set myself some rules and regulations. So an example of some of these would be I wouldn't allow myself to go any longer than 2 days in a row without training. So that meant that I had to plan ahead. And also, if I wanted to, sip cocktails on the beach or something like that, then I had to have trained that day. So I needed to earn my my snacks, my treats, my alcohol. So that kind of made me plan ahead a little bit. An example of this is if I wanted to sit on the beach and have a couple of drinks, then I had to have trained that morning. I might be a little bit hungover the next day. I might be on a bus, 8-hour bus ride the following day. So I would make sure that the day after that, I definitely hit something, no matter how I was feeling. So rules and regulations are going to be one of the biggest things. And the easiest way to think about this is you don't have to go for an hour straight. Okay, you might block out 10 minutes here and there. Okay, something is always better than nothing. So how I'd run something like this is when I'd wake up in the morning, I'd do 5 to 10 minutes of a mobility flow, which is part of this YouTube channel. You can go and search the mobility flow. So I'd do that in the morning, and then I'd get on with my day. I'd go and do a tour or walk around the city or whatever I was doing that day. Okay, if I had an extra 20 minutes later on in the day, I might be down at the beach or something. I might take my rings down the beach, hang them up on a branch or an overhang or railing or something like that. Then I might hit some strength work. Okay, if I was using the rings, I might do 20 minutes of strength work, some muscle ups, some pull-ups, some dips and levers and other gymnastic style workouts. Then if I had 10 minutes later on, I might be down the beach and I might do some sprint work. So that's a very simple way of breaking it up. I might do 10 minutes mobility flow in the morning, 10 minutes of some strength work around lunchtime in the afternoon, and then 10 minutes of sprint work in the evening. There's 30 minutes spread out throughout the day. It's very simple to structure your training whilst you're traveling, but you also need some tools. So what I'm going to talk about in this session is my favorite gym bag. So essentially I will grab my little footy bag here, my boot bag, and that would have my essentials in it. So we'll go through a few things here, and then I'll talk about what's going to be the priority. So one of the first things I'll pack is the cross ball or a tennis ball or a baseball or something like that. Something with a little bit of firmness to it. So, you can go into some mobility work. You can use this for soft tissue work, driving into, those tight, tense, overactive muscles to kind of switch them off, get a little bit of range in the joint, get a little bit more mobility, improve your position. Okay, so something like this, great for hitting the entire body. You can start with underneath the feet, through the fascia, go into the calves, mobilize the ankles, into the hips, hamstrings, adductors, lats, pecs, delts, whatever you need to. All right, so good little, so again, I might do 10 minutes of mobility, soft tissue work first thing in the morning once I get out of bed, kick off the day. All right, next up, I'm going to grab a set of bands. Okay, I might grab 1 or 2 bands. I prefer 2 bands. If I don't have enough space, then I might just grab 1 band. Okay, so bands are obviously awesome for providing resistance for all exercise or providing assistance for exercises. Okay, an example of this is if I'm doing a push-up, for example, I might use the band like this, go in my push-up. There's a band resisted push-up. If I want to do a band assisted push-up, I might hook that around my waist and I'll have that hooked on, anchored to a tree or a railing or something like that. So that's going to provide me with a little bit of assistance to help me get out of the weakest part of the push-up, which will be the bottom position. Okay, so good for resistance, good for assistance, also good for mobilization, stretching, activation work. Okay, so bands, awesome for adding into your travel pack. Okay. Throughout this series, I'm going to go through a band-only training session. All right. Next up, I have a set of rings. All right, so you can either have a set of rings or a TRX or any other sort of suspension trainer. All right, I'll go through a couple of the pros and cons of these. I personally prefer to carry a set of rings, okay, because there's 2 individual rings, 2 individual straps, so that allows me to have 2 individual ankle points, which then allows me to do pull-ups, to do dips, to do flies, you know, any gymnastics work, levers, skin the cats, muscle ups, blah, 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 blah. All right, so for me, that opens up a lot more options. But the cons to that is you can't use them in a hotel room. All right, this is where the TRX comes into play. It's a single anchor point. Okay, so obviously you can't do pull-ups and dips and things like that on it. Okay, but still a very good piece of equipment. Pretty light as well, probably only half a kilo to a kilo. Okay, and the benefit of the TRX is this bad boy right here. Okay, so this hooks onto the main piece of equipment, and then you just hook that over the top of the door, close the door, boom, there's now your anchor point. So then you can go into rows, you can go into push-ups, bicep curls, tricep extensions, rollouts, you can go into some single leg squats, lunges, you know, raining deadlifts, etc., etc. So excellent piece of equipment for using in the in a hotel room. Okay, I personally prefer to use the rings because I can just hang them from you know, branches off trees down at the beach. It just opens up a lot more options for me. Okay, next piece of essential equipment is skipping rope. I try not to go anywhere without a skipping rope. Okay, it's one of those things that you really, if you have a skipping rope, you can go through some cardio-based movements. Skipping, you can hit single unders, double unders. Okay, add in some bodyweight-based movements, push-ups, sit-ups, squats, etc. Okay, you've got a pretty solid all-round full body session there. And you don't need, they're super light, and you don't need barely any space. Okay, you can skip anywhere. Next piece of equipment would be my glide boards. Okay, excellent for numerous exercises. Again, I'm going to put together a training session with each one of these individual pieces of equipment, an entire training session, but then I'll also show you the individual movements that you can do with these. So you can basically put together a circuit, a strength session, a mobility session, a stability session, conditioning, endurance, etc., using all of these individual pieces of equipment. All right, not 100% essential, but again, the more pieces of equipment you have, the more options it opens up for you. All right, so the absolute bare essentials that I would take would be the ball, one band for me to suit my capabilities. I'm going to take the heaviest band, okay, skipping rope, and my rings, and that is essentially my travel gym. All right, cool. Let's go and have a look at some of these exercises.